Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining our webinar today. So we are excited to learn from Ivan more about the BYD Max Lite. And yeah, thank you again for everyone taking the time to attend. So as I speak, posting in the chat section a link. So please feel free to go look at that link. Just give me until tomorrow. And then we will upload the presentation along with the recording for you at that link. You can also find the same for past webinars, as well as if we had a face-to-face in-person training, you'll find the presentations there. So it's a good archive of recent trainings that you can refer to. So Ivan, over to you. Thank you again for availing yourself and come teach us a bit more about the BYD products.
Morning, everyone. Hope you're well. My name is Ivan from BYD. I'd like to give a quick presentation of the BYD company, and then we're going to go into product details on the Max Lite, and then we're going to have a sort of a pretty brief rundown of how to install it, what things to keep in mind when installing, and then also cover a little bit about the LV5 and the LV5 Plus. So, and if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to comment in the chat, and then someone will be able to help you, or myself at the end of the presentation will be able to assist you with those questions. And if anyone can't hear me or anything, please do let me know. So welcome to the presentation. Thank you, IBC, for inviting us. And here we've got the BYD introduction of the company. BYD is a Fortune 500 company, and the numbers keep on growing. The number at the top right corner, that's in millions of US dollars. So that's, I think it's 107 billion US dollars there. That's the value of the company. And then BYD's also got nearly 1 million employees with over 120,000 R&D personnel. And it's a very well-established company, established in 1994. BYD's also got a very large global presence. BYD's got a footprint all over the world, very well known in Europe and Australia, and growing in many, many other places, in many sectors, the residential, C&I, and utility. BYD's got at least four business divisions. It's the electronics, automotive, renewable energy, and rail transit. In the electronics section, BYD is involved in the manufacture of many, many products. For example, the laptop I'm currently presenting on is a Lenovo, and BYD might have even made some parts of this laptop that I'm using. And many, many other brands. Razer for accessories for laptop, computers, video like graphics cards, laptops, cell phones, and many, many other devices. Regarding auto, BYD's manufactured 10 million new electric vehicles, and that number keeps on growing year after year. And here we've just got a short video about the manufacturing of the cars. There's many, many robots involved in the welding process. And you can see the whole car being dipped into the primer and anti-rust. You can see the robots doing a spray. And robots even install the windshield. That's just a quick brief glimpse of some of the manufacturing that goes into the BYD electric vehicles. And then there's also the BYD Rail Transit division. On the left, you can see a picture of a BYD electric rail, and that's actually battery powered. There's a little coupling that charges its battery on the top. And then BYD is also very involved in many of the parts that go into manufacturing those devices. Regarding renewable energy, BYD is recently, well, within the last year or two, installed a 1.12 gigawatt hour utility scale project in the Northern Cape, which is fairly sizable and fairly substantial. So BYD is very active in the utility scale projects around the world. And other good reasons to choose BYD. BYD's got over 1.1 million installations installed and over 10 years in the residential and C&I space and a footprint of over 110 countries. And here we can see a collage of some of those installations, and some of those pictures are actually from South Africa. Regarding BYD's manufacturing process, on the cells and the batteries, BYD's got 23 years of LFP battery experience, and annually 7% of their budget goes to R&D, and they've got over 10,000 R&D personnel. So BYD's very involved in the manufacture and development of cells. BYD manufactures their own cells, and then also BYD is very involved in every step of the process. So BYD can control the quality of the product at any time. So BYD does the materials research, process development, and cell R&D and manufacture. And also on batteries, a lot of the time the point of failure is the BMS. BYD manufactures their own BMS to their own specifications and also does the firmware on the BMS. So BYD can control the quality and the process very, very well. BYD also manufactures the modules. So BYD controls every step of the process for the purpose of obtaining a good quality product. And here we can see one of my favorite videos. It's a nail puncture test comparing an NMC, which is a lithium nickel manganese cobalt, a fully charged cell, and then on the left we've got the BYD blade cell. So what happens is a nail will puncture the module and see how it catastrophically fails. And the nail puncture test is you have a very similar result on overcharging and crushing. So it's also a very good test to see how the batteries will do in extreme conditions. And here we can see the NMC doesn't do so well. So what happens is there's two sources of heat. One source will be the self-discharge of the energy in the battery into itself and into the electrolyte, and two, any combustion, external combustion that happens. And NMC has a runaway effect, so it's not generally a good idea to use NMC cells indoors. And then on our left, we've got the BYD blade battery, which is almost unaffected by the nail puncture. The little graph on the temperature and the voltage was actually sped up so that you could see the changes. So the BYD blade cell did magnificently there. So BYD developed that cell and manufactures that cell. And here we've got the energy storage inspection. This is an award that's done by a German university, and what they do is they test the round trip efficiency of installed systems. So they'll check with an inverter paired with the battery what the round trip of charging the batteries is and discharging the batteries is. And BYD's got the 8th year in a row with the top rank. And here we can check the BYD product matrix. So here we can see some of the BYD products. There's also the HV series, which is HVS, and there's also the LV series, which is the LV5, and there's soon going to be the LV5 Plus. It's a 5 kilowatt hour battery, and you can parallel up to 32 modules, up to 160 kilowatt hours. Then on commercial storage, there's the Max Lite, which is not available in South Africa, and there's the Max Lite Indoors, which is on the right there, which is available in South Africa. And you can have between 4 and 11 modules in a tower, from 30 kilowatt hours to 82.5 in a single tower, and you can have up to 32 towers in parallel. And then on the inverter side, there's the Powerbox BYD inverters, which is the smaller series and the larger series, which is the 3.3 to the 6. And then the large series, which is the SL 7 to 10. We'll get into more detail on those. So here we go. Here we can see the residential LV5, 5 kilowatt hours per module, and BYD. If you see 5 kilowatt hours on the nameplate, the usable energy is always the nameplate energy. So in each battery you get 5 kilowatt hours usable per module, and you can use, you buy the whole battery, you can use the whole battery, 100% DoD, and a C rating of 0.7. So the capacity is between 5 kilowatt hours and 160 kilowatt hours on a battery bank, and you can parallel between 1 and 32 batteries in a single bank, and you can stack them up to 4 high. It is a floor mount battery, and we'll get into more detail on how to commission those in a bit. And here we can see the Max Lite Indoors, 7.8 kilowatt hours per battery module, and you buy the whole battery, you can use the whole battery, 100% DoD, and a 1C rating. And the capacity is from 30 kilowatt hours to 2.64 megawatt hours. I do believe these are CGI, but if they are actually real, I'm definitely going to get my hands on one of these light bulbs. BYD batteries are lithium iron phosphate, cobalt free. And here we can see the construction of the Max Lite in racks. It does have a wide operating temperature range. However, your charging and discharging will get derated in cold weather. Your charging will get derated more than your discharge. And it can operate all the way up to 50 degrees centigrade. Max Lite's designed for sort of CNI applications, and it's compatible with a wide range of inverters. You can see one of the typical use cases for the battery, which would be to store excess solar power and then use that for self-consumption. As South Africa doesn't have much load shedding, the business case for installing batteries for self-consumption and is becoming more and more apparent, because the feed-in tariff is about sort of 70 to 80 cents, which isn't a lot for feeding power back to the grid, and sometimes the grid can cost anywhere between 3 and 5 rands. So there is often a good business case for installing batteries purely for the sake of saving money. And here we can see the Max Lite in and its redundancy features. So if one of the towers stops working, the rest of the battery bank will keep working regardless if that one tower has an issue. And here we can see Max Lite battery module. And you can see the 24 cells that are in the battery module. Each battery module is 7.5 kilowatt hours and 75 volts. You can see the series connection on your batteries. So what will happen is, as you adjust the number of modules in your tower, you'll adjust the voltage of that tower as well. So you can adjust the voltage to make sure it's within the operating range of your inverter battery input. There is also online monitoring for the batteries. when connecting the batteries to the internet, you only have to connect the master of the battery bank to the internet, and it's best to have the serial number and a picture of the Wi-Fi sticker on the front. And then you can monitor your battery online, as shown with the online monitoring here. So BYD is very active in the renewable energy sector, and BYD would like to cool the globe by 1 degree centigrade by being active and storing solar energy and making it more usable. It's just going to be a quick pause while I switch to my second presentation. So here we've got a quick rundown of the BYD Max Lite Indoors on how to install it, what to consider when installing it, and more product details. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them into the chats. So here's Max Lite Indoors. The purpose of this presentation is to have a look-see at the spec sheet, look what you can do with the batteries, where they're applicable, what to keep in mind when installing, and also how to install and what various installation procedures there are. So here we can see a quick rundown of the spec sheet. You can have between 4 modules and 11 modules in a tower. And here you can see, because it's in series, the voltage of each stack will go up. For example, a tower of 4 will be about 300 volts, and a tower of 11 will be 850 volts. It's always important to make sure that the inverter that you're connecting to is on the compatible list, and that your number of modules is within the recommended number of modules, because if you have too few or too many, that battery voltage will be outside the operating voltage of the inverter. And here we can see the dimensions as well. This tower is nice because it comes flat pack, so you can install it pretty much anywhere, and it's also very modular. So each battery module is a module by itself, so it's easy to install in tight spaces and that sort of thing. It's a 1C battery. Max output current is 100 amps, and the peak is 170 amps for 3 seconds. It is an IP20, so it is IP20 battery, so it has to be installed indoors, and it does have very many of the certifications, so it's easy to ship to other countries should you need it. And then the compatibilities, your compatible inverters are Day, GoodWe, Revo, and Solis. And there's a lot of development on those inverters at the moment. So Revo, Solis, and Day, and GoodWe are all coming out with new products all the time. For example, I think there's a Day 80 kilowatt, a GoodWe 80 kilowatt, and a Solis 80 kilowatt, and Revo is also coming out with new products. Here's just a brief summary of the technical specifications. Your communications to your inverter, generally speaking, it's on your CAN bus, and your warranty is a 10-year warranty. And here we can see the battery module. Number of cells in series is 24, and it's 100 amp hour. And your voltage range for that module is between 60 and 90 volts, approximately. And it's also 100 amp output. And here we can see the amount of space that you require when installing the Max Lite Indoors. It's always best to have a small gap in between your racks, 10 millimeters or more. And it's best to have more than 150 millimeters clearance above the rack to allow for airflow. And it's always best to have little bit of space behind the rack, between the rack and the wall. It's best not to install the rack flush against the wall, but between 10 and 20 millimeters. And there's two options on the feet. There's a concrete mount foot or a adjustable foot and a wall mount. So what will happen is if you've got the concrete mount feet, you don't need the wall mount. But if you've got the adjustable feet, it's recommended to use the little wall mount on the top of the rack just to stabilize it, make sure everything's safe. Here's we can see the compatible inverter list and the number of modules that you can use. For example, on the day, it's from like the 30 to the 50 range, 30 kilowatt to 50 kilowatt range. You can use between 4 and 9 modules. On your day 80 kilowatt, which is in the process of being tested as compatible, you'll probably be able to use up to 11 modules because the operating voltage of the day 80 is larger, but that's still in testing. And then there's also going to be a Solis 80 as well. And also there's a GoodWe 80 coming out soon. And Revo is also coming out with new products all the time. So it's always important to make sure that your number of modules per tower is within the operating range, within the recommended number of modules for that inverter. It's also very important to have the same number of modules in each tower if you've got towers in parallel. So for example, if you've got 2 or 3 towers in parallel, those towers always have to have the same number of modules in that tower because the voltage of that tower depends on the number of modules in the tower. If you're putting them in parallel, they have to have the same voltage. And here we can see a brief summary of the compatible inverters. And here we can see just a very brief rundown of the module itself. Sometimes people have to install batteries with a rack that's not manufactured by BYD, as they installed like third-party racks. And then it's always recommended to use the earth connection on the batteries. The batteries and the PDU, which is the connector at the top, and then all the battery modules always have to be earthed in order to ensure good communications and safety. So there's the earth point on the left, number 5, and you have your battery inputs and your BIC battery information collectors on your in and your out. The battery information collectors on the right, where it says in and out there, the BIC is behind that. It does your cell voltages, your cell voltage measurements, your temperature measurements, and your cell balancing. And this is what you get in the box. You get your module, cable to daisy chain your power to the next module, your communications cable, and your mounting brackets. Very briefly, you can go through the PDU. Your PDU's got your power connections to your battery stack, your power connections to your inverter on 11 and 12, or your bus bars, your rotary handles, your rotary switch, and which is number 24, and your on-off button, which is number 20. It's always best to only turn your rotary switch when the batteries are off. So the little on-off switch there, you turn your batteries off and then you rotate your switch. It's always best to turn that switch either to off or to on when the battery is off. And you can turn the battery off with the little number 20. And then on your communication side, all your communications on the top right, that's your parallel communications, your inverter communications, and your internet monitoring. Then number 19 will be your cable to your BICs, and that daisy chains down to the bottom module. What you get in the box, you get your cables, your power cables on the left to connect your tower modules, and termination resistors. It's very important to keep in mind of the color of the termination resistors. I'll get to that in a moment. And here we can see the warranty, 10-year warranty, and at the end of the warranty, there's a minimum of 70% remaining energy. And then the minimum throughput energy will be dependent on the number of modules that you've got in that tower. Regarding the cell, the cell's an LFP battery, and it's very well designed for the purpose of safety. And it's got also certified, I do believe the UL is a American certification, the UN 38.3 is an IEC 62619. Those are European protocols. Regarding the modules, very, very safe in terms of cell safety. LFP is an inherently safe cell chemistry, And then your operating temperatures are between -10 and +50. There is a bit of derating on your cold weather, and your charging derates more than your discharge. And there's also a lot of protections in the PDU. The PDU will disconnect if there's any issues such as overvoltage, overcurrent, overtemperature, or any short circuits. So the PDU will protect that tower from any external interference. It's a 1C battery, so you can charge and discharge at 1C. And it does have redundancy. So if one of those towers goes out, the other towers keep working. And there's also an AC connection on your master tower, so that if your master battery has an issue, it can the PDU that communicates to the inverter can still be powered to keep your whole battery bank alive. And everything you see in that picture there, BYD supplies. So it'll be the rack, the PDU, and your modules. And it's very, very quick to install. There's also a lot of online monitoring. It's always best to keep note of your PDU serial number and your PDU Wi-Fi sticker on the front. And then with that, you can register on the portal and you can look at your monitoring. Here we can see a quick installation video. So here we can see the construction of the Max Lite rack. There's some diagonal stabilizers just to make sure that the rack is stable. And on our right, you can see the little glands where the cables come in. There's two different types of feet. There's adjustable feet and the concrete feet, and they've got the concrete feet on those, but you can choose which type of feet you use. You can see they're installing the adjustable feet. The adjustable feet are very useful on floors that aren't level. Here you can see the installation of the PDU. And now they're just making notes of the battery voltages when they install, just to make sure that all the modules are at the same SOC when they are installed. It's very important when expanding the battery bank. Let's supposing you've got 7 battery modules and you'd like to add an extra 2, that the existing modules are the same SOC as the battery modules that you're adding, which is probably going to be about 30%. And here you can see the various parts of the PDU and how to connect to your inverters. This is how the power cable connects to the PDU between your inverter, your busbar, and your PDU. So what will happen is you'll attach a lug to the cable, and then that lug will get screwed to the connector. It's always best to make sure that that screw is nice and tight, because once that cap is on, it's actually quite difficult to get off. So here we can see the screw going in. We always recommend using tightening down nice and tight, or if you have new installers, just to use a torque wrench, just to make sure they get it at the right torque. It's very important that the PDU and the modules are earthed. There are earth connections automatically happen that happen through the chassis of the frame, so you don't have to connect the little earth connections between each module on if you're using an official BYD Max Lite frame. And here we can see the connecting to the battery via the Wi-Fi. So there's an app called Max Lite, and it's available on Android and Google. So Android and app. Now you can see the updating the firmware. Very useful to update the firmware on commissioning, and then choosing your so what there's two steps, which will be setting the time, and then you'll be choosing your inverter. It's very important to choose the correct inverter. The batteries won't turn on if the wrong inverter is selected. and then you'll check, and it'll give you a message that it's been selected, and then your summary screen will have all of your min and max cell voltage, your min and max temperature, and if you've got any issues, it's nice to take a screenshot of that summary screen. And here you can see the LED button. It's always best to make sure your PDU is off when turning the rotary switch. Here we can see the wiring of your wires for communications on your paralleling of your towers. So the purpose of this presentation is just to familiarize people with an installation. We always recommend installers look at them, have a good look at the manual, and there's also a service guideline as well. And it is available for download at bydbatteryarcs.com/downloads, and also at bydenergy.com. So in terms of installing your modules, they're about 65 kilograms each, so it is easy for 3 or 2 people who've eaten their eaten their 2 strong guys, or I always recommend 3 or 4, because if those batteries fall, it is a safety issue. So yeah, I do recommend lifting it safely. There are various different methods to lift. You can either use like a forklift, as was demonstrated in the video, or you can use labor. And here we can see the installation of your PDU and the measuring of your module voltage, just to make sure that all the modules are at the same SOC when installing. If there is an SOC imbalance, it can take a long time for the modules to self-balance, because they can only discharge a certain amount over a certain time. So it takes a long time to automatically sort out an SOC balance between modules. If the modules are installed all at the same SOC, then there's no problems. And here we can see the ground connection. It's very, very important for the grounds to be connected for the purpose of communications and for safety. You can see the daisy chaining of the BIC communications. And then your termination resistor on the out. That's a white resistor, termination resistor. If you have any issues on site, please remove the termination resistor in the PDU and the termination resistor on the last module and put them in your hand or on a surface, and just check which is which. The termination resistor on the last module is white. Termination resistor on the PDU is a light gray. And sometimes, due to lighting, it looks like one is the other. There are going to be labels in future on those termination resistors to make sure it's easily distinguishable. And you can see the daisy chaining of your power from the PDU to your modules. There's the last module, and there's the cable that links the PDU to the last module. Here we can see the power connector that was demonstrated in the video, and the various steps that are taken to install it. It is a lock connector, so if you are struggling to remove the connector, those connections do rotate, and there's also a lock that prevents the tab being operated. So there's a rotary a rotary device on the top of that connector, which will prevent the tab being open. And once you've pulled that tab, you should be able to pull the connector off. If that connector is still locked, you'll have to rotate that connector to unlock it. Always important not to pull too hard to get to make sure those connections can be safely removed. And you can see the communications. You can either connect on a wire connector or on an RJ45. Those be connections to your inverter, and your inverter connections can also be TCP/IP over Ethernet. And there's various different other communications that can be used, but almost always it's CAN high and CAN low to your inverters. And here we can see how to connect on the wire connectors. And your AC input on your master tower, that's there for the purpose of ensuring that if that master tower has an issue, it can be powered by the AC, and then it can keep communications alive between your battery bank and your inverter. Only the master tower of the bank needs the AC input, the other towers don't. And here you can see where those AC connections go. And for the parallel communications, if you've got only a single tower, it's important to have the termination resistor in the P out port. And if you've got multiple towers, it's important to have the communications cables as shown, of termination resistor in the P in of the master tower and the P out in the slave tower. And there's a single tower. There you can see where your termination resistor goes in. Your termination resistors are slightly different colors, and depending on lighting, one can look like the other. So it's always best, if you've got any issues, to take them out, put them on a surface, take a picture of them, and then you can see which is which. And in terms of turning on, it's always, this will be the turn on procedure. So best to make sure that all of your fuses and everything between your inverter and your battery are closed before turning on either the inverter or the batteries. And it's very important not to open any fuses under load, because DC can arc very, very well. Because AC, as your waveform goes through zero, it kills the arc. DC, it doesn't go through zero. So your arc has to break based on the distance. And sometimes it can arc for a very long way, especially on your higher voltages, your 800 volts and that sort of thing. So it's always best to ensure that you never open fuses under load, or close them. So it's always best, if you're opening or closing any fuses, for the inverters and the batteries to be off. And then in terms of your turn on procedure, it's always best to make sure that your rotary switch is only operated when the battery is off. In terms of the app, in the manual have the turn on procedure and turn off procedure for all your commissioning procedure steps. And then in terms of your app, you've got your Max Lite app, which is available on Android and Apple. And there's also the laptop application, which can connect to your batteries. There's no cables or anything that are needed. Those connections are done via Wi-Fi. And here we can see the app and its use. First thing to do is to download it, and you agree to your privacy policy, and then click start. And then once you've done that, and the app's still connected to the internet, it'll download the firmware, and then you'll be able to connect to the battery Wi-Fi. It's important that only one device is connected to the battery Wi-Fi at a time. If you have multiple devices, they'll conflict with each other. And then once you've connected and updated the firmware, you'll have the option of commissioning. And there'll be 2 steps on the commissioning. If you click yes, you'll be able to set the time, and you'll also be able to select the inverter brand. It's very important to select the inverter brand. It won't be possible for the battery to operate if the inverter brand isn't correctly selected. And then once your battery's been successfully configured, you'll get your summary screen. So this is a snapshot of someone who wanted to test if they could use the whole battery, and they took their battery from 100% all the way down to 0 SOC, and then the battery's turned off on low SOC. And to get the batteries to charge again, they just turned the battery on, turned the inverter on, and charged the batteries again. So they were able to use the whole battery. They bought the whole battery. They wanted to use the whole battery. If you do have any issues, it's important to just restart the app and/or battery. And after installation, it's important to maybe cycle the battery once or twice just to get the SOC calibrated. And here we can see an example of an installed battery. And where your communications go. So that's a single tower, so you can see the termination resistor in P out, and your communications to the inverter in the CAN bus port. And then that's the turn on procedure, essentially making sure all your fuses are closed before turning on, and then rotating your, and when your inverter and your batteries are off, rotating your switch to the on position, and then turning on your battery with the LED button. And for your turn off procedure, you want to make sure your inverter's off, and then you hold the button on the PDU for 5 seconds to turn the battery off, and then you can rotate the handle. And only when everything's off and you wait, say, 2 or 5 minutes, wait 5 minutes for safety, and then you can open all your fuses if need be. It's important to only open any fuses when everything's off. There's also a black start function on the batteries, so you can power the batteries without communications active first. So the way the batteries normally operate on a normal turn on is the batteries will wait for communications to the inverter before they give output on their terminals. Supposing you're installing an inverter that needs to black start, or if you're installing somewhere, let's supposing at night where there's no grid or anything like that, and you'd like to power the inverter for the purpose of commissioning, you can hold the LED button for 3 seconds. There'll be the LED flash will flash briefly, and what will happen is it'll give power out on its battery outputs. Please make sure that check your polarity and all your DC connections to make sure that that's all correct before doing a black start. And then there's also the Wi-Fi activation. So if the Wi-Fi is not used for a certain amount of time, you have to press the LED button once for 1 second. That'll activate the Wi-Fi, and holding the Wi-Fi button for 1 second on, 1 second off, 1 second on, 1 second off, 1 second on, 1 second off will reset the Wi-Fi password. And here we can see the process for extensions and making sure your batteries are all at the same voltage and the same SOC. And here's some images of the Max Lite and the Max Lite tower. That's a tower of 11 modules, and that will be about 850 volts, and your operating voltage will be up to about 1,000 volts. You can see the image from the back. And some images of the PDU and the battery module. There's a LED indicator. If your battery's got any issues, it'll probably show a red LED. And then what do with the red LED, with the PDU with the red LED, will be covered in the service manual and a service guide. And then we're just going to have a quick run through of the LV5. And then this is the LV5. It's 5 kWh per module, and you can have up to 32 of them. And then you've got some specs. It's a 0.7C battery, 0.7C charge and discharge, a max, and then peak is 200 amps for 10 seconds. And then you can have up to 32 of them, just 160 kilowatt hours. This is a low voltage battery, and it's compatible with Victron, Day, Solis, Mega Revo, SMA, and Voltronics and Focus. And that list is always expanding. And it's got a lot of the certifications needed for transporting. So if you're wanting to install in other countries, you can always know that the certifications to get them through the border will always be available. In terms of what's not in the box, the Cat5 cables between the batteries on your paralleling not included, and your DC cables, and any bus bars and that sort of thing that are needed for your DC connections. What you do get in the box is 1 battery and 2 covers. Those go on either end, and a termination resistor. It's very important when you're putting batteries in parallel to insert the termination resistor. They won't work if the termination resistors aren't inserted. And then there's 4 feet in each battery. They are a floor mount battery, so you can't, it's not recommended that you install them on walls. And there will be documents that you get in each box. There are also earthlinks. Those earthlinks serve as an earthlink from one battery to another, and also a structural to keep the batteries in line. And your tools that are needed. Your batteries are IP20, so they do have to be installed indoors. And here we can see the right side view. You've got your cable to your inverters on number 6. And that's, generally speaking, it's a straight cable. But for Invictron, you've got to make sure that you use a Type A or Type B cable. Well, it's recommended to have a Type A cable, Victron Type A cable. And then on your right side, there's the negative and positive power connections. Please make sure the polarity there is correct. And then on number 7, that's your grounding connection. And then you can see your box and how to take it out. And then you've got various options. You can either install the feet and have that as a bottom module. Please don't install the feet on any modules that are installed above that module. And here we can see it's installed on the wall. And you can see the installation of the earthlinks. It's always recommended to connect your earth for the purpose of good comms. And here we can see a single battery connected to your inverter, your positive and negative power connections, your inverter comms, and your earth, your grounding. Grounding is always very important for the stability of the communications. And here we can see how to connect multiple batteries in parallel. It's very important to get your cables in the correct position because the batteries are automatically configuring. So if your cables are all in correct position, you don't have to use an app or anything to commission the batteries. The battery will turn on and automatically configure themselves. And then you won't have to, it is recommended that you do turn on and update the firmware, etc. But it's not necessary to get the battery bank up and running. So for example, if there's an issue with your cell phone or that sort of thing, you can get the system up and running without any commissioning on the batteries, aside from ensuring that your communications in the correct positions. And it's a daisy chain on your comms with a termination resistor on either side. And then your master battery will connect to your inverter and do the communications between the battery bank and the inverter. And here we can see the difference between the single battery and the parallel bank. And you can see where your covers clip on, and your power connections. Always please ensure that your power connections are the correct polarity. Your cables, you can 16 or 25 square fit quite nicely. 35 square, sometimes the lugs are too large, and if you screw the 35 square lug in, it might crack the connector. So 16 or 25, I'll recommend. Some 35 squares work, and I have seen people install 50 square and then sort of slice the lugs down to fit. That's not recommended. In terms of turning on, you can hold any button on the batteries to turn the bank on. Sometimes they don't all turn on at once. And for turning off, you can hold any button to turn them all off. And then your batteries have got an LED code. They'll either be green. Green means everything, they're happy. And then orange is a waiting. If it's flashing orange, then it's waiting. And if it's red, then there's an issue. If the batteries are red, it's best to just turn them off and turn them on again and see if the issue goes away. And in terms of the BYD Energy app, that's then you can commission the batteries and update the firmware with the BYD Energy app. And in terms of your minimum recommended number of batteries, it helps with the stability of the system, especially if there's load shedding or a grid failure. Then having the recommended number of batteries is highly recommended. Here we can see the minimum number of recommended batteries. All these documents are available at the bydenergy.com website. Here we can see just a quick installation guide. Let's see if this one. There we go. how to connect the covers. Sometimes the covers with the cables can be a little tight, but cable ties normally sorts that out. And here's how to connect the communications. It's very, very similar for the LV5 Plus that's going to be launched. So this is the LV5. The LV5 Plus, which is arriving soon, also has a very, very similar installation procedure. And here's just the turn-on procedures. Green means the battery's happy. If you've got multiple batteries in a bank and they're all green, that means the batteries can see the master and the master can see the inverter. If they're orange, if they're flashing orange, it means they're waiting to connect to the inverter and the bank is also waiting for the master to connect. It's very important to always have your termination resistors in. If you've got a parallel bank like this, if there aren't any termination resistors, the bank won't function as a bank. The master will just think there's not any other batteries connected to it. And so the master will go green, and then all the remainders will go orange. And then to turn on and turn off, you can hold any button. And now we're going to be on the Q&A session. If anyone's got any questions, they're welcome to ask. I'm just going to get back to my team's control. I'd like to thank IBC for inviting us. And if there are any questions, we can get to them now. Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and I'd like to thank IBC for participating. If anyone does have any questions, they can always mail them through to IBC. I'm going to share a PDF of the presentations with IBC, and IBC will share it with everyone. There'll also be a guide for the LV5 Plus, which is arriving soon, and then also a little installation guide on how to size systems and that sort of thing, if anyone's interested. And that'll be on PDF. And yeah, thank you very much for everyone who's attending. If there are any other questions, any last questions in chat? I think we're all good. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I hope everyone has an awesome Wednesday.